Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff After Hours Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon. I'm a retired 27-year veteran of the NYPD. I retired as a detective sergeant out of Manhattan North Homicide Squad. And with me today, below me, is Detective Phil Grimaldi, retired Detective Phil Grimaldi from the 60 Precinct Squad, which was in Brooklyn, and he retired out of the Intelligence Division. And that patriotic fella in the upper right is retired police officer and attorney, defense attorney, Joe Murray. Guys, welcome to the show tonight.
Howdy,
Thanks
glad to
for
be
having
here.
me.
You know, this Summer Wells case has taken a lot of different twists and turns. And we were very optimistic that this past weekend that EquuSearch was going to find something. And it wasn't for lack of trying. We had those guys on last night with the founder, Tim Miller, and Dave Rader, and what brilliant, brilliant people they are. I mean, they almost had us in tears telling us some of their success stories, some of the cases that they worked on. And Tim Miller, the reason that he actually founded EquuSearch out of Texas was because his own daughter was kidnapped and murdered in 1984. And that was how EquuSearch was founded. And Dave Rader, oh my God, what an unbelievable guy, you know. And Duty Ron and I kept saying, you know, you guys do God's work. And I really, really believe that. And all three of us here, I mean, when you talk about God's work, we're all 9/11 first responders. And uh, in a couple of weeks, it'll be the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And someone asked me to do something on that date, and I had to turn it down. And I said, that's a sacred day for me and for everyone else. And even more so this year because it's the 20-year anniversary. So I know everyone will be thinking about that on that day, and some of us lost friends, some of us lost relatives, and it's a date that will live in infamy, almost like you know the attacks on Pearl Harbor, and we'll always remember it as New York City police officers. So, guys, I'm gonna early on. I'm gonna play the first interview that Don and Candace had, and I just think that this interview says a lot. It tells us a lot, and let me see if I got to get this playing so I can. It's running. These commercials are the worst. Hang on a second. Let me get it back up there. Okay. Uh,
While you're going, Bill, I just want to say that, I love that you have me on the show. I love what you do with your show. And when I saw that episode with Don and hearing about them and their efforts, I was just blown away by that. I mean, it's just, the way the world is today, and there's so much hate and anger and viciousness, especially social media. I see so much of that. I'm so glad I got off. But guys like that who are just giving from the heart and doing what they do, it's just amazing, you know?
yeah, it's they are amazing people. I'm sorry, I'm having a problem getting this.
Their professionalism, I got to agree with you, Joe. I was very taken back by when I heard about this group that was going to do a search. They sounded like buffs to me. And then I did the research and they were absolutely the exact opposite of that. They were
All
super
right, guys,
professional.
I got it back up on the screen. Let's just listen to this. I don't know why it keeps jumping to this.
We're now in the El Paso County Courthouse in El Paso, Texas.
All right.
All the way over to the porch, and I watched her walk into the kitchen where the boys were watching TV. And I told the boys, I said, "Watch Summer, I'll be back." And within 2 minutes, I came back, and I asked the boys where their sister was, and they said she went downstairs, mom, and her toys in the playroom. I said, "Okay," and I yelled downstairs for her a couple times, and I didn't get no answer, which was unusual because she was really bad. And so I went down there to check, and she was nowhere in sight. She was just gone. I don't go on walks around here or runs because I'm scared of the bears and snakes and even the coyotes that are around here. Well, whoever has my daughter, I pray and hope that they have not harmed her and they bring her back to us safe and sound.
Just trying, I mean, go to the FBI, the police, and clear it up. I don't know. It seems kind of elusive.
It is strange that I've been thinking stuff and I've never heard of it until just recently. But I wish they would come forward and explain themselves. And if you're not a suspect, at least come forward and say what you've seen. She was a tomboy. I shaved my head. She wanted to have her head shaved like me and the boys did.
She tried to shave her head
She tried
in
to
the
shave her
back
head
and make
herself.
it. I think you can see it in some of the pictures, and it was getting out of control. So we decided to shave her head off and let it grow back long, and she shaved her head so she wouldn't feel bad. And, but it didn't bother her at this point. Well, I knew right away that she was abducted. You know, I knew that right away, and that's what I told them from the beginning. But they have to go through their, have to get the word.
Investigation.
They have to do one step at a time, I guess. But I'm sorry, but they had to spend so many man hours in these woods and everything. I've seen them limping and everything else, and I feel for them. I just wish there was a way that neighbors could search neighbors' houses, and then if they're not willing, get a search warrant or something. But there's just no way you can search every single house, in the eastern United States or whatever. But I wish there was a way. Just thankful for the persons that's doing that, out of love, trying to get information and trying to get her found. And thank them from the bottom of our hearts.
That means a lot.
And we thank everybody who's trying so hard and praying so hard. She's an awesome young lady, and we just wanted that. And there's always going to be haters, and it's always going to be that way in this world. And we just want to focus on the good friends and Christian people that are trying to help us and praying for us and praying for Summer. And we thank them from the bottom of our hearts. And that's the kind of people we try to relate with and socialize with. So we don't know anything about, no red truck, or we hardly know many of our neighbors. I mean, because we just try to be around good people. I mean, and we do have good people in this area. We found out since this has all happened. We got some real good neighbors and good folks everywhere. But
the most important thing is to bring Summer home. Hey. I'm sorry that you feel this way about us, but we love our children with everything we have. We've never went without, thanks to Summer's daddy and my husband. He's always provided for us and has worked as much as he could and can and still is. And I'm sorry that you guys feel that way, but that's my baby, and nobody would ever treat her like that as long as I was around. Ever.
She loves to.
Guys, that was the interview that obviously caused a lot of heads popping and analyzing and body language analyzers and stuff. Phil, you've done thousands of interviews as a New York City detective. When you watch that interview, what are your feelings?
Well, right off the bat, I mean, the look is not good. They both look like they could be intoxicated or high on narcotics. There doesn't seem to be a lot of emotion from the mother. I mean, she's got a 5-year-old daughter that's missing. I think that interview was about 2 weeks in. I would expect most people would be emotionally drained, maybe hysterical even, So those are just the first couple of things. And then what did she mean by that when she said no one would ever treat her like that? I wasn't sure if she was talking about things that were said on the internet, or was it like a Freudian slip? So there's a couple of things that are just odd with the whole interview. And then the father talking about and her talking about shaving the head, obviously bizarre behavior that took place. And truthfully, I don't think that they sound credible in that interview.
One of the things that I've been hearing a lot about, and again, we don't have any confirmation from law enforcement that's working this case, is the polygraph tests. And we're hearing a lot about the polygraph tests. And I know, just to throw it out there, in the New York City Police Department, we almost never, ever used polygraphs. And I know Joe Murray, the attorney, former police officer, attorney, told me that at times the district attorney's office uses polygraphs. Joe, you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah. The district attorney's office, I think, uses them to vet their own witnesses. Primarily, that's what they do, just to make sure that they are getting the facts straight. And then on one occasion, I was able to convince the district attorney, because my client and I were just so convinced of the facts that I, as a defense attorney, was willing to allow her to submit to a polygraph. Now, I use a polygraph pretty often as a defense attorney, but I do it in my controlled environment with my expert, where I'll talk to the expert, give them the complaint, and say, look, these are the primary issues that we want to flush out. So I do it, and I submit it to them. It's almost malpractice to allow your client to allow the district attorney or law enforcement to have unfettered access to your client to ask them whatever they want. So I would only do that in a rare occasion, and that occasion has not arisen yet, and I did have that one instance where I consented to the polygraph, but they wanted it to begin with a 2-hour interview without me even in the room, and I just shut that down, So polygraphs are very effective. I find when the district attorney has its own doubts about either the complainant or some of the facts, if I give that to them, it may push them over the edge, because especially in Queens, because I use someone who received their training and administered the polygraphs in Queens County for the DA's office. So I kind of give them back their own product,
But Joe, once you administer one polygraph, what is the point of administering a second polygraph? I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, let me address that. I am not an expert by any means, but I deal with my guys on a regular basis. And the way they put it to me, which kind of makes sense, you really can't fool the polygraph. You know how people talk about you put a tack in your shoe and you try to, it's not that easy. And there's like test questions. Like, for example, he'll say to the person during the interview as they're testing them, have you ever lied to get out of trouble in the last 20 years? You ask me that question, I'm going to have a reaction. You know what I mean? Like, so they're testing your response. Now, that obviously is not the question that they're there for, to test for, but they're looking for a response, some kind of question to see how you will react. And I think, when someone says she took the test, they allowed her to go home and come back and retake it, well, they're going to do that test question again to see what the reaction is. And if she's on some kind of sedation or some kind of narcotic to prevent her from getting excited, that'll be tested. That'll be there. You can rule that out.
Phil, I would like to just ask you, and being an experienced detective, an experienced interviewer, interview and interrogation is an art form, we all know. And I spoke about it numerous times here, that investigation is an art and a science. An interview and interrogation happens to be part of the art. How would you go about interviewing Candace? Excuse me.
Candace, in an interview, first off, I would have her secluded, just by herself, and I would have someone else in the room with me. It would be a what we would call a one-on-one interview. Really, it'd be two of us, but and I would just try to start out with basic questions, things that I knew the answer to already, pedigree information, and what Joe was talking about with the polygraph, it's almost the same in an interview interrogation. I want to get a baseline. I want to get a read on that person when they're giving me honest answers that I know the answer to already. So now once I've done that, I'll let them tell the story. Tell me the story about what happened on the day your daughter disappeared. She'll go through the things. I might pop in a couple of questions just to get a little clarification on things. But then once she has made her statement from beginning to end, so to speak, and I have a pretty good idea of, what kind of body language she might exhibit if she's telling the truth or lying, because I asked her those baseline questions, then I might go back at those specific questions, and the interview would take some time. Like you said, it's an art form. And then I would highlight the points that I really thought that she was being deceptive or she wasn't telling the truth on, and I would hit her on those points. Now, what Joe was talking about, I did have occasion to have experience with lie detectors, both on the job and when I first retired in the private investigation business. And what they do is they try to get a baseline, and the reactions come from your breathing and from your pulses. And they have a question that they know the answer to, and they see what your response is. Now, I also had occasion where a person came in to do a polygraph, and they admitted that they had taken tranquilizers. No good. Polygraph expert wouldn't do it because now they were sedated, so to speak. So there's different, areas of expertise with the polygraph that, as good as it could be bad if they, if they're on narcotics. So if I was to interview Candace, getting back to that, those are the points that I would try to make. I would try to figure out what I thought she was being deceptive on, and that's where I would hit home.
Well, isn't it always a good idea to obviously know basic truths, and then also so that if the person's lying, you know the truths already, and then you can challenge them with their lies, with the truths that you already know about. And that weakens their whole demeanor and their proclivity to lie.
Yeah, right off the bat. I mean, we know that she reported her daughter missing at 18:30 hours on June 15th. So that's 6:30 p.m. So I would use that as a baseline question, tell me about the day, blah, blah, blah. And I would say, what time did you call the police? And if she said at 6:30, I know that's a truthful answer because I know it ahead of time that that's when they call the police. Things like that would be the questions that I would get my baseline on. And it might be something as subtle as looking directly at me, answering a question that I know the answer to already. But then when we start to get into the specifics of, before things that happened before she was reported, and she may start to look away or become nervous. Maybe it's a twitching eyebrow, a lot of different things. But those are the things that I would try to look for. And then having a second person in the room, also, I have their observation. Maybe they're going to pick up on something that I missed, and there's specific ways that we do interview and interrogation. I don't want to divulge everything, but I would always want to have my subject in any interview. I'd want to have them outnumbered. I mean, unless it was just a routine interview on something that, wasn't a criminal matter. But if a person I'm, possibly want to eliminate or target as a suspect, I want to have the upper hand by having two people in the room and have them just alone by themselves.
Yeah, one of the things I also notice is that usually you only get one, at most two shots at a suspect. And if you don't get it the second time, usually they come up with the L word. Joe, you want to talk about that?
Well, I got to tell you, being a criminal defense attorney and now being on the other side, because I used to interview people all the time. I didn't care if I arrest you for shoplifting. I wanted to talk to them and try to pull a confession or admission of some sort out of the person. But now being on the other side, hearing what the clients are saying, when I put the statement in front of them and said, you want to explain this to me? I was like, I was so nervous. I didn't know what to say. How could I say that? They wouldn't believe me if I said this or that. Like, just hearing the justifications that some people will put forth and say things intentionally, like what was the name of that guy? Tancliffe, right? Tancliffe confessed.
Right.
Marty Tancliffe confessed to killing both of his parents. I mean, that's pretty powerful. But people sometimes do that. They'll make a false confession, or they'll say something because of another reason or another interest they're trying to protect for whatever reason. Okay, we'll let you go home. Just give us this statement. Okay, I'll give you the statement. I have a client who's a retired New York City detective who was accused of a horrendous crime. He's retired now, but at the time he was, I think, 8 days away from his retirement date. And IAB had been on top of him for years and hounding him. And he was there and he was in the interview room. The duty captain shows up and everyone was pressuring him to sign this statement. And they're like, listen, big guy, you sign this thing, you walk away, you'll be retired in 8 days. He signed it. He signed it. It was absolutely insane. And it was, if not for the facts that later came out in discovery, the crimes that he was admitting to and signing confession for were committed by a white guy. The complainants identified him as a white guy. He's from Jamaica. He's blacker than the ace of spades. But he signed it, and he's a detective. So
he should know better than that.
He should have, but he had 8 days until he could retire. He had his service retirement, and he was just so fed up and done.
Where was his delegate? Where was his representation? How could they allow such a thing?
Oddly enough, this happened in Rockville Center. This was part of the way they got him. The Rockville Center detective was telling him, I used to be on your job. I was the DEA delegate, and they were just, he was like, listen, you got 8 days to go. Sign it. It's a stupid misdemeanor, blah, blah, blah. You'll retire before anything. I couldn't believe it myself. I just couldn't believe it, but it happened. And he didn't know what the discovery was. When the discovery finally came after they arrested him, we saw the statements of the complainants. And it was male white, male white, male white. I just couldn't believe it. So, and that's what I want to bring to this. I mean, as cops, we see that side. But now as a defense attorney, I'm seeing how sometimes these false confessions come out.
Katie Jean, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. Steve Colon, thank you so much for the $9.99. The other night on Duty Run's show, we had David Rader on, who is the EquuSearch Midwest, and I just want to play a little bit of that with everyone because we also had him on last night, another time last night. But let me just share this on the screen. There's so many clicks you have to make with this; it's unbelievable.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to make it full screen for everybody so they can see it. We'll still be.
Introducing Flex Power Tools. More power. Longer runtime.
Be able to talk.
Sorry about the ads.
Right, Dave?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. I put a little music into it, so you can let me know if you think it's corny, but we put a little music in it.
Okay.
Whoops. I'm going to let this roll from beginning to end because there's some photographs and some things that Dave was kind enough to share with me. And Dave, I got to tell you, man, again, I feel like we've known each other. And this just might be me getting a little corny, but I feel like we've known each other. The way we have our conversations, it flows so smoothly. It's just like, it's uncanny that it's just so easy to speak to you. So I hope you share somewhat similar feeling with me and with Bill.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the first interview that we did, I expected it to be a 15-minute jaunt and go, and here it time got away from us, and and I know, Bill, it was past your bedtime, and I appreciate you staying on here with us. But
I don't even know what my bedtime is anymore.
That's why I decided that maybe we should do this a little bit earlier, just in case we do get into it a little bit. But you're right. I mean, we spent an hour and a half, and it just felt so right and just so natural. So Like I said, this has been a pleasure of mine to be able to come on your show and share, the aspect of that we go through as searchers and putting together a major search like this.
What were the temperatures like there today, Dave? Talk about humidity and Fahrenheit temps.
Yeah, right now I think we hit about 90, and it was the humidity was close to, I think, 68%. You just walk out and you start sweating, and then you get into areas like this. And again, I don't know if I mentioned it the last time, but people think going into woods because it's you've got a heavy canopy and it's shaded that it's cooler, and it's the furthest thing from the truth.
Right.
That canopy actually holds just dead air. There's nothing moving underneath that canopy, and it just makes it even worse.
Wow. And that's that's another obstacle for your search teams, right? Is staying hydrated, trying to keep out of heat stroke conditions.
Yep.
You got your communications, your comms are probably on point. But that's the thing. We talk about safety all the time as retired police officers and professionals. We want to go and do our mission, do our tour, and then return home to our families. And that's what it's about. We don't want to, have anybody go down. So talk about what we have up on the screen here. It looks like a cross up on a hill, a little bench. Where was? I know. Don't say location where this picture was taken, but what brought you upon it?
Yeah, I can actually tell you where this is. Is that it's a church that's down from her house, and this was, I believe, the church that the family went to. That's where the media was staked out at the time. I just drove around, kind of looking at some different areas this morning, and it caught my eye, and I decided to go up there and take a picture. Just to show what this community, what this little girl means to this community. So they did this little impromptu, memorial for her. Beautiful. And a little prayer garden. And I wanted to share that end of it also with your followers.
And that was a wonderful thing to think of, because it gives the folks outside the country and outside of the Tennessee area, us Northerners and Southerners, we get along so well. I come down south to go to Florida. My family lives in Mobile, Alabama, on my wife's side. When we go down there, it's like, that Southern hospitality. The communities are so close and so tight. This is a testament of how great the people are and how they come together. You saw it firsthand in the first searches when everybody was getting out there and bringing in supplies and trying to lend a helping hand. These folks, their hearts are bleeding just like ours, right?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, there was a lady named Trudy and her husband Chris that took care of McDonald's for us this morning. They took care of Chick-fil-A for lunch this afternoon. And I think that they even have Subway for tomorrow if and when we decide to make that call for tomorrow. There is another area that we want to definitely check out before we leave town. But the Southern hospitality, you hit the nail on the head on that. Mm-hmm. These people treated, the drinks, we wanted for nothing today. We absolutely, we were taken care of, and that's one less thing off the plate that we have to worry about, which is a tremendous help.
Right. And Dave, we give thanks and praise to those generous folks, the generosity that comes out of this community. No matter what is going on in the community, they're out there with you. My grandparents lived in Dallas, Texas, which is kind of not the deep south of Texas, but I spent many summers over in Dallas, Texas, and I know what it's about all across the United States. A family also living in California down by Orange County, the bankrupt county of Orange. But yeah, so I've been all over the place, and it's no matter where you go, you get some great folks that are ready to, lend that helping hand. Let's talk about the next photo that's going to pop up here. Is this? Let me see. Let me get it going. Is this at the same location? It looks like it could.
It's at the same location. It's like in three separate little. it's in the same area, but it's like 3 separate little trees and crosses and things like that. So it was spread out just a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a prayer garden there. It looks like what the sign says, and it's a bunch of ribbons hanging from some, it looks like some newly planted, like a tree or some type of brush there. It looks beautiful with the rocks, and it looks like pavers around. Yeah. So it's nice. Eddie Overbay says to you, Dave, from the chat, I'm from the area. Watch out for snakes, copperhead and rattlesnakes, and black racers. Never heard of black racers. Prayers for you and the team, from Eddie Overbay.
I appreciate that, Eddie.
I think you guys are pretty, well versed on what's inside some of the brush there. So I think you guys know what's going on. But that's also a very nice thing to say. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Let's see what we got next. And then I know Bill's chomping at the bit. He's ready to go.
I'm always chomping at the bit.
Oh, man. And, is this the same location? Yeah, it looks like
same location. Same location.
Beautiful. I love it. I love that you shared this with me. It was kind of early. I was in the middle of my first cup of coffee, but I didn't care. Now, what is this handsome and beautiful crew here? Is this your team, or is this part of the team? Is this everybody?
No, that's not everybody. Those are the ones that were actually able to come down and put forth the effort that we did today for summer. Great bunch right there. I mean, there's just, again, I am absolutely blessed with the individuals that believe in the same thing that I do and that we do. And again, the other day I said we're a bunch of misfits that fit. And there's my misfits. Just a great bunch, and there's a bunch of them back home that couldn't make this trip. But the ones that couldn't, they texted us in the morning and said good luck and go get her, and just very supportive. But we took this at lunchtime today in between breaks. So. I just thought, again, I thought maybe your followers like to see.
Oh yeah.
We're all walks of life. We're all different shapes and sizes, but yet we have one mission and one mission only, and that's to bring this little girl home.
Yeah, and you know what? This shows the diversity in the team. You got a pistol packing braided woman there with the hat right in front of you. I know you have retired folks from the law enforcement community, right? Talk about some of the different trades.
Guys, I just wanted to sort of put the focus on Midwest EquuSearch, just the amazing people they are. And, we talked about how they do God's work and how they were upset yesterday that they didn't find Summer, either find Summer alive or find Summer. They felt almost a sense of failure, but that's the furthest thing from that any of them could consider themselves a failure, because they're just unbelievable people. And I just want to read you the one quote that Dave Rader said that to me is so significant to this investigation. A stranger abduction, considering where this house is, does not make sense. The odds of that happening are slim to none. If she wandered away, one of the family dogs would have went with her. So this is from a guy who's done thousands of searches and in all over the world, not just in the United States. Joe, I see you're a little skeptical. I can see it on your face.
Well, I do have some opinions about this, and they are conflicting. They are definitely conflicting. On one hand, when you hear her during that first interview you played, and she presented the timeline that Summer was with her brothers, and they were in the room, they were watching TV, and then she comes in and say, "Hey, where's Summer?" Oh, she went downstairs. Matter of factly, she went downstairs. When you talk about an abduction, hearing the terrain and the layout of the property, when you talk about an abduction, that would mean that somebody had to be lying in wait for her to step out of the house and snatch her up and escape with her. And I just find that hard to believe. But I just think of Candace. Now, if you look at Candace, and we've all dealt with witnesses, just consider Candace as a run-of-the-mill witness to a crime. And you come upon her, you get to a crime scene, and she's a witness and tells you she's a witness. And you interview her. What would your opinion be of her? The way she speaks, her eye contact, the fact that she may be high. Just grade her as a witness. First, when you grade her as a witness, I think you'll agree with me, she's a terrible witness. She's a terrible witness. Now, when you think about that she's a witness for herself in this case, it makes her look guilty. And I try to separate that by her own interview, and I try to transpose her as if she were a witness and what I would think of her as a witness. I'd rather take someone else, someone like you or Philly, would be much more matter of fact, good eye contact, good recollection. I think we're overjudging what she's saying, and we should account for the fact that she's a horrible witness no matter what. So I'm
But Joe, doesn't that count as to credibility?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't want to read too much into that. That's one factor. You know, now you got to look at what she's telling you and the facts and substance of it. And I got to say, there's another thing. This is now the second child who was lost. Her sister was abducted, right? That's like lightning striking twice. You know, that's almost like when you hear of a husband and wife, and the wife died, and the husband cremates her, and then you look back and you see this guy's ex-wife suddenly died and he cremated her. I mean, what's the chances of that? It's like lightning striking twice. So I'm suspicious, but I'm open-minded because I'm looking at her and I don't want to judge her too harshly because of her imperfections as a witness in general, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense because, look, we all make judgments. And I just want people to know in the chat, part of our job as New York City police officers, detectives, was to make judgments. That's what we do with the police. So when I hear you saying in the chat, don't judge people, that's what I did for 27 years. And that's what Phil Grimaldi did for 21 years. And that's what Joe Murray did for 15, and now he's a defense attorney. So you must make judgments in the criminal justice field. There's no, you can't just be a keyboard warrior. You have to make judgments, and that's what we did. Phil, I could see you want to comment.
Yeah, I don't like that word judging people because to me, I look at fact. I'm a very fact-based person. And as an investigator, I went by fact. So if somebody told me something and then I went out and I checked the alibi on what they told me, now it was fact to me. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's quite clear. I don't think this is being judgmental. I think it's quite clear what Joe said, that they look like they're intoxicated. So that gives me reason to believe that there could be deception in what they're saying. And they also, both of them, Candace and Don, they point to a scenario that they're convinced that she was abducted. And, I mean, is the possibility at 6:30 on that night even like a realm that she walked away from the property, that it has to be, or she walked away and fell into a body of water or got hurt or something? No, they're immediately going to, she was abducted. They talked about sexual predators and stuff. So I'm very suspicious of their appearance. I'm going to steal this from Joe. They gave a very bad look in that press conference. It was a very bad look. So that is obviously cause. I don't think it's judgmental. I think it's cause. It's fact. They were high. They appeared to be either intoxicated or high or both. And then they have a history of narcotic use and domestic violence arrests. And she was given alcohol to a minor and stuff. So we know all of these things. I don't think it's judgmental at all. I think these are facts of the case, and you have to continue in your investigation and your line of questioning based on fact.
Guys,
I think you're right about. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just. We're going to get deeper into this in a second. I just got to go to a quick commercial, and we'll be right back.
Great,
folks. Detective Michael O'Keefe is the author of 3 novels: "Shot to Pieces," "A Reckoning in Brooklyn," and Burnt to a Crisp. You can order his books on Amazon.com or his website, MichaelO'KeefeAuthor.com. Michael O'Keefe in 1992 had a life and death fight with a drug dealer named Kiko Garcia in the hallway of a building in Washington Heights. Luckily, Michael came out of that fight alive and Kiko Garcia was killed. The book Shot to Pieces is somewhat autobiographical in part in regards to that case. These books are some of the best police novels you will ever read. Shot to Pieces, A Reckoning in Brooklyn, and Burnt to a Crisp. You can order them on Amazon.com, or you can go on his website, MichaelO'KeefeAuthor.com. Folks, if you're thinking of moving down south to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Carol Waters sells real estate down there. She's a former bartender at the Fitzpatrick Hotel in Midtown. Her husband, Rob Mahan, was a former NYPD officer who rolled over, became a New York City fireman. Together, they make a great team of realtors down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So if you're looking for a vacation home, a condo, or just want to relocate totally, give Carol a call, 914-261-6681, or you can email her at carolwatersellsmyrtlebeach@gmail.com.
Boy, I'm really in the spotlight tonight. Joe
He's
Murray,
here.
Joe Murray, attorney at law. You people that are listening tonight have the pleasure of listening to and seeing Joe in the flesh. Joe Murray is a fantastic criminal attorney. He's a great victims advocate. He can be reached at jmurray-law.com, jmurray-law.com. His email is joe@jmurray-law.com, joe@jmurray-law.com, and his phone is 646-838-1702. As you heard, he's been on both sides of the fence. He understands when he tells you he knows what you're going through.
I'm so glad that he's here to see his commercial live.
It's so funny when I was like, maybe I should do the commercial that I'm on the show, but nobody does it better than Philly. Philly's like the best.
Philly's almost like Joe Pesci going, "Hey, you need an attorney? Go to Joe Murray." I love it.
I could do that too. Hey, you guys need an attorney? You go see Joe over at jmurray-law.com, okay?
It'll get you out of trouble like he did my cousin Mario.
Don't talk about that, Joe, Bill, okay, please.
Listen.
So, one of the things that was that is very important this week where the 3 boys were removed by Child Welfare Services. Now, that is not a coincidence. And I also know that, potentially the family had a social worker assigned to them prior to Thursday when I believe the boys were removed. But that could mean 2 things. It could also mean that TBI and the local police and the FBI are getting closer to possibly making an arrest in this case. Philly, what do you think?
Well, I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but we talked about it for the last few weeks, and then lo and behold, the children were removed. I mean, we were saying that there should be interdiction by Child Protective Services, and as we said it, I mean, just within a couple of days of the last time we said it, the kids were removed. So, yeah, I would think that it definitely points to, things, the wheels are spinning on the whole investigation, and maybe things were revealed that we didn't know about, and they felt that these kids were in some type of danger, and so they removed them. And I think it was based on what we're seeing and the things that we're hearing about the odd behavior, the location being so desolated. And so I think it might be a good thing for the welfare of those kids. We don't know. I said it off air. I'm going to say it again now. I have a feeling, I just have a strong feeling about this case that law enforcement probably has a very good idea of exactly what happened, and they're waiting for certain things to develop before, whether it be physical evidence being examined or phone records, telephone records, computer records, whatever, or, if God forbid remains are found, before they move forward with some type of an arrest, So, but I just feel strongly. I mean, you got the FBI, you got the TBI, and you have the local law enforcement. So I don't think they're sitting around on their hands when they're putting as much effort as they're putting in these searches. I mean, think about that, So, and listen, you could be one homicide a year or 10 homicides a week. You know, when you're on the case and things start to develop, you follow the way the direction of the investigation goes, and you turn over. You develop some good stuff.
100%. Joe, same question.
Yeah, I have to. I don't think. Of course, I don't know, but I don't think it was anything that the law enforcement community shared with them, because there's strict disclosure laws that whenever you remove a child, you have to disclose the evidence that you're relying upon immediately. So I think a law enforcement would be a little more tight to the vest unless it was something that could present as an imminent threat to the kids that are at home, the boys. I think it's more of a cumulative effect of her appearances on TV where she appears high, and the evidence that she was giving, alcohol to Hunter, and things like that. And sadly, this is really a good point. I'm so happy you brought this out. Sadly, the most important people in the world to us, our children, are so sadly under-resourced by these agencies. They don't have the manpower. They don't have, the ability to make these checks and check on these kids, whether they're foster kids or actual, children of the parents, biological parents. They're just so underfunded and understaffed. And the children are the most important things in our lives, and we're not doing enough to protect them. They're always playing catch up. Here's a perfect example of perhaps more intensive supervision or intervention should have been applied to this family, but their resources are so stretched and so limited that a tragedy has to happen before they step up their efforts.
You think this, with CPS getting involved now and removing the 3 boys, you think this is cover your ass stuff?
Absolutely.
So they're covering their ass in case something. And I know that a lot of people were calling them out on the fact that what's going on. Why, if she's a suspect, and if there's also all these other evidence of alcohol and drug abuse, and all you have to do is go into someone's home and do an inspection and see what the home looks like. And
Bill, whether or not she becomes a suspect or Don becomes a suspect, based on the information we know, if they're completely innocent of this, I still think it was a good idea to have the interdiction by the child services because of the odd behavior, like Joe just stated, giving alcohol to a minor, shaving the heads. There's obviously drug use. There was domestic violence in the home just a few months before this whole thing took place. So whether or not they're suspect, I think it was a great thing that they did. And possibly due to this show. We talked about it for the last couple of weeks, and then in the last few days, they were removed.
Yeah, I agree. I think sadly, like I said, they're playing catch up. But once this got, appeared on their radar, they started doing checks and perhaps looked at the school records and school attendance, and and cumulatively felt that these kids are in danger and need to be removed and supervised. So. Sadly, again, I make that plea. We need to, address our priorities a little differently. The kids are so important to us, and we need to fund and apply the proper resources to this type of work.
Well, Joe, as a New York City police sergeant, when I was on patrol, my responsibility, as it's a sergeant's responsibility to remove kids from the home when that term used was imminent danger, when there was imminent danger to their life, or whether they could be sexually abused, whether they weren't being fed right, whether they were being mentally abused. And that was the call, that an immense responsibility given to the sergeant and the NYPD, that you had the power to take children and take them away from their parents. Which wasn't a good feeling, but it was a good feeling that maybe you may have saved their life by removing them from the situation they were in.
Yeah, and it's not just, if you look at it, it's not just the power to take them away, it's the power not to. And that's what keeps me up at night. Did you do enough to, when you're confronted with a situation like that, the power not to remove a child because you didn't think it met the threshold, it's got to haunt you. God forbid something happens. It's an awesome
Joe,
responsibility.
There were two jobs like that on patrol, police patrol. One was, of course, the child, whether to remove the child. The other was domestic violence, whether to make the arrest or not. And years later, they almost gave you no discretion, and it was almost a must arrest in most incidents of domestic violence. One of the things I want. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Joe brought up a good point about whether to take or not take and doing enough. I worked in Coney Island for a lot of years. I was in a squad there. We handled a million runaway missing persons. And a lot of times we had a group home within Coney Island, and it was not a very nice place. It was in a kind of rundown house. And the woman that ran it, she was nice as she was. If a kid said, 14, 15-year-old kid said, I'm leaving, she would let them go. She didn't, she wasn't locking doors and holding them against their will. So now you take a kid out of a home, a dangerous environment, and you put them in that group home. And now you're faced with the fact they could walk out of there, and then it's 2:00 in the morning. They're in the middle of Coney Island. And I'm talking about in the 80s and 90s when Coney Island was pretty tough, So you have to weigh all of these options. And I think maybe that comes into it a lot of times with these social workers where they have a burden of cases, they have a large caseload, and they look at it, all right, maybe this isn't so bad because if I take the kid's going to go into the group home. Maybe that's worse than the situation that these kids are in. So it takes a lot of, I guess, balancing. It's like a balancing act, and they have to figure it out. But in this case, I think that maybe because of, like Joe said, the high profile case, these interviews that they did, and there was basically a lot of facts, and they acted on that.
Yeah, Phil, you're 100% on point. That's exactly what happens. These social workers, caseworkers, they look at the alternative. If I remove this kid, where am I putting him? Is it going to be better or worse? So that's why their threshold individually may be even higher. The bar may be higher before they decide to make a removal.
Joe, you guys hit everything really on the head. The other problem is child welfare is understaffed. They're underpaid. It's a really, really difficult job, and they have way too many clients for one person to handle. So, when things happen, they always want to point the finger at child welfare, but something, staff them better and pay them better. And it's as I said, it's a really ridiculously tough job.
Expand them, hire more of them, and like you said, pay them better. And they're talking about all types of infrastructure and all these different things in this current, political atmosphere. Money towards our youth, I think, is money well spent, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you something else. The court system is a disaster. The family court system is an absolute disaster. The real good judges run from it. They don't want to be there. It's a nightmare. And that's part of the problem as well. We need to have good jurists, our good top quality jurists assigned there to handle these matters. And I'm not attacking the ones that are there. They're doing an incredible job for what they have. But, more needs to be done. I mean, family court itself is a disaster. The way it's run and operates, it's I can't, make this point strong enough. And I'm sure it's the same all around just by the nature of it.
Well, yeah, it's underfunded, and anywhere you go, an agency like that is underfunded. You can't, you can't get water from a rock, right?
Yeah.
One of the things
even the people who can afford an attorney, I just got to tell you, I know we're deviating, but real quick, the way they have this system is so frustrating to me. Somebody who wants to hire me, who makes, like 50, 60,000, and it's just so important to them, I'll get on a case. But then their spouse or girlfriend or whoever the adversary is, they are unable to hire an attorney. They don't want to hire one, and they go to the state-provided 18B lawyer. The way this court system operates, if I want to have a hearing, they'll say, okay, on Thursday, we'll give you between 1 and 2, and then we'll come back and we'll do 2 weeks from then, and we'll do on a Friday from 3 to 4, and then we'll come back, and because they all have to be in different courtrooms at different times. It's insanity. Now, what does that do to me, that I have to spend 4 days to conduct a hearing on private counsel? I mean, how do I do that? How do I build this person to go handle that? It's an absolute disaster. It needs to be just blown up and started over from scratch.
Wow.
You know, Joe, there's so many things in the criminal justice system that need to be fixed. Someone in the chat asked, can we talk about our gut feelings about the case? And I've said it numerous times. My gut feelings are that the answer is somewhere in the circle of Candace and Don and their circle. That's where the answer is. And I think that to think otherwise is, well, I'm not going to put down anyone else's opinion, but I've worked hundreds of homicides. And from my experience, I'm thinking the answer is in that circle of people.
I'll give you my gut.
Go ahead, Joe. Joe, you go ahead.
I'll just give you my gut on this. I happen to think that when you look at the big picture, you take it from a macro perspective, the way she's telling this story, how Summer was discovered to be lost, it seems like the window of opportunity was so minute that she lost sight of her. The boys were inside watching TV. Where's Summer? Oh, she's downstairs. And she calls downstairs looking for her. Like, what window of opportunity could a bad actor have had to come in and do this? But by the same token, just from watching her and looking at her interviews, learning about the facts of the case, I don't see her as someone capable of pulling this off and doing this. And why? For money? I mean, I just don't see her motive to do it, and I know that's what it points to. But again, I have to wrestle with the window of opportunity. And I believe her, Candace, when she says, I train my kids. There's wild animals out there. Don't go down the hill. Don't go there. I believe that she knew that. And that even if she were to do that, how far could she have gotten? Unless somebody was laying in wait right there, which I think is a red flag, because you'd have to be there for a long time waiting for her to wander out of the house. Like, how is that even possible? Somebody's waiting there on that property, that rural sprawl that we saw, the picture of it. Somebody just happened to be there waiting for her to be alone outside and snatched her. I just can't wrap my head around it. So the jury's out on me. I don't have an opinion yet as to who to blame for this. I still am not sure.
Billy?
I want to piggyback off of the beginning of what Joe said. The window of opportunity was very small. We know that she was alive and well as late as 2:30 in the afternoon. However, we have Dave Rader just recently, within the last week, told us he was on the scene, and he also concurred with Billy and I that he didn't think that there was a opportunity for an abduction. Now, there was a lot of reason why. There were dogs there. It was the middle of the day. It was 6:30 in the evening. It doesn't get dark until about 8:30 at night at that date and time, maybe even a little later. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of activity. And Joe just pointed out something, that the window of opportunity is very small and a person would have to be there, and it's rural, and she didn't wander off. And I would think if she was grabbed, there would have been dogs barking, probably her screaming. I think someone would have been alerted. Now, in my gut as an investigator, I feel that the mother, Candace and Don, seem to be deceptive in what they're saying. And I think it's possible that maybe she was hurt in an accident and died, and they disposed of the body. And that's the only thing I can come up with this time. It's also possible she was intentionally killed or something to that effect. But I don't think she wandered off. I don't think she was abducted. I think that something happened to her, and the parents aren't telling the truth about what her whereabouts were. And then, she's down the basement, so she would call out to her. That seems kind of odd. They're all at home, and so maybe she's playing down the basement. Why did she need to call out to her? So the whole thing just doesn't sound kosher to me. So I think that they're definitely, in my opinion, 100% they're deceptive in their statements, that they're not telling the truth, What happened to little Summer? That's really still up in the air. I don't think she was abducted, and I don't think she wandered off.
Well, Phil, you gave some really good reasons for your dissertation there. But the one of the things that I believe, and I still believe, I don't believe she ever got back to the house from when they went swimming and were at the drugstore. I don't think she ever brought her back to the house. And I always thought that the key interview was of the three boys and interviewing them. Did you see your sister? Because I don't believe that story that she put her into the house and she went downstairs to play with her toys. I think that's totally made up. And there was another part, and when I played the interview, I'm sorry, the audio was horrible, but she said something about we were planting flowers, and then we went in the house and washed our hands, but then she went over that really fast because it's almost like they washed their hands and they came back outside. Then she went back in, and it just didn't make sense how she was telling the story. Like it seemed like she was in 2 or 3 places at once, at least in her mind she was. And then asking the boys, "Watch your sister," and then she went downstairs, and that was the last day. It just doesn't make, to me, any sense at all. So I err on the fact that I don't think she ever made it back to that house.
Bill, I want to agree with you on that. I'm thinking it's very possible that she didn't make it back to the house. But I want to ask you a question. Now, you're in the box with Candace, and she starts telling that story. Wouldn't you go a little hard on her, speak specific, tell me this, that, So I don't think that, she was being truthful at that point. But how would you handle it if she was telling you that, Bill? At that point,
I would have to challenge her really harshly on her inconsistencies. And that that's how you break someone down. You confront them with their lies, and her inconsistencies to me would just, like we talk about Freudian slips in interview and interrogation, and both of them, her and Don, had a bunch of Freudian slips during their interview. Nona 617, thank you so much for your $5 super chat. She wrote, "Love you guys, but you need to watch the interview by Chris McDonough, which you had today." Thank you so much for your super chat. Folks, we are all experienced investigators here. Phil Grimaldi, Joe Murray, and myself, with the New York City Police Department, where I did 27 years, Phil Grimaldi 21, Joe Murray 15 years, and now he's an attorney. And we won't tell the backstory to that one, but he's maybe for some other time we'll tell you that story. But so he's also a seasoned investigator, and he was once a boxer. That's part of the story, his backstory. But
I think that's great, though, the whole thing, how it morphed. We won't go into it, but I love it. It's a great story. It's a great story.
What do you mean once a boxer?
Already he's still a boxer. But he doesn't like to get hit in that pretty nose anymore because he's an attorney, But so we're all experienced investigators. And, one of the most important things in police work and investigation is, of course, instincts. In life, that's one of the most important things. And our instincts are telling us something's not right, and something's very, very wrong. And in a case like this, it's not good to just feel the instincts. You have to gather evidence. You have to work with other investigators. You have to use the art and the science of investigation. And I would hope at this point, some of the science to the investigation, i.e. cell phone records, electronic records, computer records, live chats, TikTok videos, all of those things are being cataloged and put together. And those are some of the same things that you can use in the art of investigation. Once you get the evidence back, you can use that in the interviews to challenge inconsistencies, to challenge lies. But as we said, we say it numerous times, we're not privy to all of that stuff that the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has, the FBI has, and those are the tools you use as an investigator to challenge a suspect with.
Bill, I got to agree with you on a lot of those points, and I've had witnesses that had that matter of fact kind of way about them and the way that they were talking. I don't think that she had that. She wasn't so matter of factly. She was kind of exact about, I went down the basement, the time, this and that. And then she made that statement about, nobody would treat her like that, not with me around, and one of the Freudian slips. So there is just, I don't know, kind of my instincts are really kicking on them not being truthful. I'm sorry. That's really, that's I got a strong opinion about that. And you talked about all of the evidence. There may have been search warrants that we don't even know about. We're not privy to the case folder. And there may have been things recovered in those search warrants that might lead to the person that's responsible.
That is a very troubling statement that, you brought up, that nobody would ever treat her like that while I was around. And you could see before she even finished saying that, it was almost like, oh no, how do I get out of this? Explain what she's saying. That bothered me. But again, I go back to her just in general. I don't think you can really just hold what she says, as a good witness in any respect. But it is troubling. The biggest thing I have is that window of opportunity. And why would Summer, from going in the basement to play, I need the layout of that house. How do you go from down in the basement? And how do you get out of the house from that point? Does she need to pass by where Candace was or the kids were? Would anyone see her as she's leaving? Is there a side door halfway down the stairs that she could have gotten out? And what is she going out for? Is there a doll that she left outside? Is there a teddy bear or some toy that she wanted to get? How did the house look? I'd love to see the first DD5 on that when they do the initial search around the property. Is this the place that you see toys sprawled all over the place? They're not put away at night, where she would be going out to look for something? I think there's so much more in that case file that would really help us if we had it. But the fact that we don't, I think it's hard for us to draw any hard conclusions here.
Yeah. Well, look, I've said from day one, we're not here to solve the case. I can feel the juices flowing, and it's almost like I want to work this case now. And I think Phil Grimaldi feels the same way.
Well, Mitch,
and the contingent of New York City detectives down there, and you feel it. But that's not our role here. We're talking about it. We're talking about some investigative steps that should be taken when we're talking about what we would do. And, it's always easy to be an armchair quarterback, a keyboard warrior, like we always say.
Well, that's us lawyers. We always come in after the fact, look at everything that the cops and everyone else does, and we micromanage it. That's our, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? It's incredible.
Yeah,
Bill,
100%.
I would love to hear the 911 call when they called the police, because Candace, through her interviews, and she did several of them, doesn't seem alarmed at all in any of these interviews. And I believe Dave Rader, who was present in the first day or two, said the same thing. She didn't appear to be alarmed. And he had a layout of the area. I'm not sure if he was inside the house. I think he was, but and his, I know he's not a detective, he's not an investigator, but he's done a lot of searches, and he seems he seems methodical, and he seems like a common sense individual, which I always try to say that I am. I use common sense in a lot of instances, and he had the feeling, it seems like, that there was no abduction. He pretty much said it was very unlikely. So coming from that, and that 911 call, that would be telling. If your 5-year-old is missing, even for a minute, you're going to be frantic, So I don't know how much time passed before they called the police, but I know that there had to be a 911 call or a call to sheriff's office. If it was tape recorded, I'd like to hear that and see, what the demeanor of Candace was, or whoever it was that called the police, And obviously all the other things that we don't know about, the interviews of the kids, the brothers, and all the other interviews that I'm sure that they conducted.
Bill, I have to agree with you when you made that statement that you don't even think Summer made it home, that Candace stopped somewhere else. I just want to ask you why you say that, and then I just want to comment about it, if you don't mind.
Well, for me, it's an instinctive thing, and I think it's that the fact, the story she told, to me, just makes no sense at all. And even Philly just brought about the one part, which was, oh, if someone would hurt her, they wouldn't do it if I was around. Like that, to me, that was like, that, that was crazy. That was a crazy statement to make.
Yeah.
And, as there's an old expression with Shakespeare, you doth protest this. I can't even say it. You doth protest this too much. And she was protesting, and that sometimes puts the guilt right back on the person that is protesting, And I found that to be very, a very strange statement to make. And just, the whole fact of, even I don't think the whole timeline is really verified, because the only people that can really verify the timeline is law enforcement, because you're getting it from people's mouths. You're not getting it from electronic timestamps. You're not getting it from video cameras. You're not getting it from GPS. Those are the timestamps that I trust.
I was going to say, because I agree with you, if she's guilty of this, then that whole story is nonsense, because just like the window of opportunity for an abduction to take place was just too narrow and too small, similarly, for her to have done something with her at that point, when she says the boys told her she went downstairs, because then where's the body? Where's the body? I mean, if she disposed of the body, or, whatever she did with it at that point, you would have a trail or a trace of it. So I kind of agree with you that, and I hope law enforcement is looking at that, only the hard, like you said, hard stamp of timeline should be taken for granted, because if in fact she is involved in something nefarious with, her, because I'm relying on that, the mother, her sister was abducted. Her sister, her own sister, Candace's sister. So lightning striking twice like that to the same family. But I love that you said that, because that just like, pow, it opens it up. If she is involved, there's no way that she brought Summer home and they were playing and watching TV and then she went downstairs, because either way, if it was an abduction, that's too narrow of a window. It's too desolate of an area. Like you said, with the dogs and the terrain, it's just too hard to pull that off. But similarly, we know that the police would have had to go to ground zero, search the house, search everywhere, and move out. How did she get rid of the body? So I agree with you, and that's a great way to put that.
One other point I want to make about the abduction. Had there been an abduction and law enforcement thought there was weight to that there was an abduction, wouldn't they have put out a statement saying that, watch your kids, there could be another abduction? They would have definitely.
There would have been roadblocks.
Well, roadblocks, sure, but I think that there would have been a media release saying, we think there's reason to believe that there's someone in the area that may have abducted a child, so that it could prevent another child from being abducted. So, and law enforcement took a very a very definite posture. They kept everything close to the vest. And with regard to the searches, which we didn't get into really, did they direct the searches over the weekend to a specific location, Bill? Do you know that? Because that would, I think, would be.
I asked David Rader that, and I asked, how did you determine what areas to search? Did law enforcement give you specific areas? And he indicated no. Okay. He searched based on the proximity. If she actually did walk off, where could she have gotten to?
Okay.
And he was also somewhat secretive about where they were searching, because he didn't want everyone to know to come out there and more or less harass the EquuSearch people. So
they work closely with law enforcement, so that may or may not be the case. So let's just leave it at that. But I really feel strongly that there was no abduction here. I think the chances of that are very minuscule, very minuscule.
Vanessa Overton is saying, she's asking, if police start with parents and work their way out, how did law enforcement move from parents to abduction theory so fast? Now they're going back to parents. I don't know if anyone ever did go to the abduction theory. That was given to us by Don early on in an interview. He said she was abducted. I don't think there's any evidence of that. But
I think
he
they
went
look
to
at
that.
everything is possible when the complaint initially comes in. And when you have a missing person, you start at the home. You know, I remember a tragic situation that we had in the 115 where somebody had called, they had not heard from their relative, and what do? We searched the house first.
Of course.
Sadly,
Well, that's missing person procedure. The very
Yeah.
first place you search is the house.
sadly, the officers that went to the house searched everywhere, even the closet, but there was so much clothes in the closet, they overlooked the body. And it was Halloween. And then later on that evening, we got a call of a headless body in the street. And we thought it was like a Halloween prank. Someone went into the funeral parlor and pulled the body out. The guy later confessed he killed him and put him in the closet. And they overlooked it during the search. The closet door was open. They stuck their head in there. There was piles of clothes all over. So yeah, I agree. In this case, everything was on the table, but the search began at the home. I mean, that's just 101.
It starts there and it just moves out, for the home, and then you go to the surrounding area and all right, how far could she have gotten in this short amount of time? And you have dogs EquuSearch enlisted drones, and they, all types of,
Cadaver
equipment.
dogs. Yeah.
They had both cadaver and they had bloodhounds, and so if she wandered off or if she was abducted, I think we would have solid evidence on that by now, or we would have a solid direction. We don't have that. I think that those things are very minute as far as being on the table as far as what happened to Summer. And I think that, like I said, I'm going to go with maybe she was accidentally hurt and killed and they disposed of her, or something, horrible happened. And I don't see, I read some of the chats about sex trafficking and sold her into slavery or something to that effect. I just don't see that either. I just don't feel, that there's anything here leading in that direction. I could
The
be
only
wrong.
reason why I leave that open, Phil, is because Candace's sister disappeared. That's the only
I know what
reason
you're
why I
saying.
leave that open.
I know what you're saying, but again, that window is so small. What did they do? Somebody drove up and said, here's Summer, and they drove off. I don't know.
Unless, like Bill said, they never even made it home. They
Yeah,
had
that seems highly likely that the kid never made it home, only because they had the picture that was taken in the back of the car. I think it was from a video, and if they did recover the phone that took that actual video, which I believe was Candace's phone, the timestamp and a location should come up on the cell phone data. So I mean, there's not a lot of opportunity. Again, an abduction wouldn't take place at 6:30 in the evening either. I doubt very highly that would be the case. It would either be in the middle of the night or something to that effect. And, if she was lost, she was left at a supermarket like that, she would have been found by now, So it's clear that something horrible happened to this kid in my mind. And, they're not being truthful as far as I could see, from the interviews.
No. 99 Pink Balloons, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. She wrote, I wonder if Summer was sedated to be able to sleep. Now the chat disappeared. I meant to read the whole thing. Folks, just thank you so much. There's 1,400 people in the chat. We thank you for listening to Police Off the Cuff After Hours. If you're not a subscriber, please go on our YouTube and subscribe, hit the thumbs up. You're hearing us critique this case based on a police perspective and the perspective of three gentlemen with tremendous amount of police experience. I've worked a lot of child homicides. I'm sure so is Phil, and so is Joe Murray. So this isn't foreign territory to us. And we use what we call in the law enforcement business deductive reasoning. And you come up with what you think could have happened based on what makes sense and what does not make sense. 99 Pink Balloons, I wonder if Summer was sedated to be able to sleep leaning on 2 gallons of milk when she was in the car. I don't think Summer made it home either. Well, earlier on in this case, we had Barbara Butcher on, who was one of the premier, there's a picture of Summer sleeping on those cold milk, the gallons of milk. But Barbara Butcher gave her analysis when a lot of people were saying that they thought Summer was dead in this picture. And Barbara Butcher, who was the chief of staff of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, she gave her opinion that she felt she was very much alive based on numerous factors that I won't go over again. But
Bill, I think that that's a great question that she posed because, to my theory, she could have been medicated for some reason and they gave her too much, or she could have accidentally found and ingested some of narcotics that they might, they're obviously playing around with narcotics. Maybe she ingested it. So it could have been an accidental death. That's what the point I was trying to make. Accidentally either ingesting something, or they gave her something and she passed away from it, and then they disposed of the body or something to that effect. Or it could be just a straight up, an abuse murder.
yeah,
Bill, that's a great point. The picture that you bring up, and one of the questions that jumps out at me, and I know the police do have her cell phone, was that something that was orchestrated because she wanted to show, yeah, we were on our way home and I took a picture of her and she was alive? Because I do agree with Barbara Butcher. She made the case for it as an expert that she was alive in that picture. However, I want to see her cell phone. Why was she taking pictures of her as she's driving home? And why was it so, and is there a pattern of that in her cell phone? Let's look at the pictures that she's taken. I remember that other case that we were talking about, they barely had any pictures of the kids. So if it fits the pattern and we see in her cell phone that she's always snapping these little pictures of her in different scenarios, like being in the car, okay, then it's benign to me. But it could just be that they're trying to cover themselves and took that picture to show, oh, she's sitting there, she's sleeping,
That's a great
established
point,
that she was alive. I agree with you. See, your NYPD instincts are kicking in there, Joe, because I was with that before. I was saying, why did she take? It was actually a video, and that's a picture from the video. Why'd she take this video of us? It was kind of, I don't know, it just didn't seem a little unusual to me, So yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, let's find out if the cell phone should tell you. Now we had an electronics expert. I forgot the guy's name, Mike Fabosi, Bill?
Yeah, Mike Fabosi is actually a computer crime expert.
Right. He was saying that, and I brought the point up. Yes, I thought it was just iPhones, but it's all these smartphones. When you take a picture, it gives the GPS location of where you were when you took the picture, as well as a time. So that might be very, very important to this case. And then if that picture was taken at, let's say, 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, let's say, now the window is closing. It's only from 4 till they call the police at 6:30. So now it's a 2.5 hour window as opposed to a 4 hour window, So all of these things.
And the location, too. If the location was off the path that she claimed to have been on, that's another red flag.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It could actually work in both ways. It can establish her credibility. I was here when I took the picture. I was at Walgreens, and then they say, okay, the GPS says it was 2:30 at Walgreens. Then we know that she's not lying about that, So it works both ways. But
Sure.
I'd really like to know the results of that cell phone information.
Yeah.
Phil, that's what I've been, you're preaching to the choir. That's what I've been saying all along, is that electronic timestamps are so important when they can prove and they can disprove what someone's saying, and that's one of the things we don't have access to, and that would be so important in this investigation and in doing the interviews. Without knowing this stuff, how can you intelligently interview anyone without having those specific timestamps available? Guys,
and that would be cause for a re-interview, Bill. If I interviewed her and she said it happened at this date and time and I was here, now I get the cell phone information, which might take 2-3 weeks, even longer. I have it and I see, well, she wasn't telling the truth. Bring her in. Let's go over it again, So that's
really, she's not that she was not telling the truth. She was inaccurate. There's a difference. And I think on a bad witness like this, You got to give some room for inaccuracies. Completely telling a different story that she was on a different road, completely different. Yeah, that's a false statement. That's a
Of
cover
course,
up.
Joe.
The
Of course.
window of time is with someone like her. I just don't see her as a good witness in any event.
I agree with you. I agree with you. There would definitely be a little bit of leeway, but that's when I would re-interview her. And if she said she was at Walgreens and it was 2:30 and she was by the watering hole or wherever it was, and it was an hour difference, that's something I drill down on.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Oh, waitress, thank you so much. She asked a question thank you so much for the $5 super chat. She asked the question, why are there no pictures of Summer planting flowers with Grandma Candy that day? I can't answer that. Yeah, that's a good question, though. You're right, because she's clicking pictures everywhere else, right? But
What
there's
about grandma's flowers that she was picking? Where are the pictures of the flowers? You know,
Yeah.
I agree. There's just too much here that we don't know.
Sure.
Absolutely. You know, guys, we've gone on for an hour and 25 minutes. And when I asked you to come on this show, I just said, about an hour. So I guess I lied. You should have interrogated me, you know. But I want to thank you guys so much. Attorney Joe Murray, you do a fantastic job. You're so articulate. You're so smart. And everyone loves your American flag back there. That's a real, that's your
Yes.
signature. Phil Grimaldi, straight out of Brooklyn. Great. You have a great point of view, and your experience as an investigator is unparalleled. I want to thank you guys so much. And
Thank
all
you,
you
Phil.
folks that were in the live chat, thank you so much for listening. On behalf of Police Off the Cuff, I'm Bill Cannon with Joe Murray and Phil Grimaldi, and this is Real Crime Stories. Thank you so much for watching and listening.
Stay safe, everyone.
Good night.